The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty Chicago streets as Detective Sarah Martinez adjusted her Kevlar vest and checked her weapon one final time. Beside her, Rex sat at perfect attention, his dark brown eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that never failed to amaze her. After 3 years of partnership, she could read every subtle shift in his posture, every twitch of his ears, every change in his breathing pattern. And Rex could do the same with her. "Today's the day, boy," Sarah whispered, running her fingers through the thick fur around Rex's neck. 3 months of surveillance, 2 undercover operations, and 17 different leads have all brought used to this moment. Rex's tail gave a single, confident wag. He understood. Somehow, he always understood. The radio crackled to life. "All units, this is command. Target vehicles are approaching the warehouse district. Data 3 minutes." Sarah's heart rate spiked, but Rex remained calm, his steady presence grounding her as it had countless times before. This wasn't just another drug bust. This was their chance to take down the Mendoza cartel, the organization responsible for flooding Chicago's South Side with deadly fentanyl for the past 2 years. As they drove through the industrial district, Sarah's mind wandered to the day she first met Rex. He'd been returned by 2 previous handlers, who claimed he was too intense and impossible to work with. The moment Sarah walked into the K9 training facility, Rex had looked up from his kennel with those penetrating eyes, and something clicked. Where others saw aggression, she saw determination. Where they saw stubbornness, she recognized intelligence. "He's got trust issues," the trainer had warned her. "And bounced around too much. Might take months to bond with him, if at all." Sarah had knelt down beside the kennel and extended her hand through the chain link. Rex had approached slowly, cautiously, and when he finally allowed her to touch his muzzle, she knew they were meant to be partners. The warehouse came into view, a massive concrete structure surrounded by rusted shipping containers and abandoned vehicles. Perfect cover for illegal operations. Sarah parked 2 blocks away, activating her radio. Unit 47 in position. Rex and I are going in for reconnaissance. They moved like shadows through the maze of containers, Rex's paws silent on the cracked asphalt. His nose worked constantly, processing hundreds of scents that were invisible to human senses. Suddenly, he froze, his body rigid with concentration. Sarah dropped to one knee beside him. "What is it?" she whispered. Rex's nostrils flared as he tested the air. Then he looked directly at Sarah and gave a barely perceptible nod toward the warehouses. East wall. Jackpot. The smell of processed narcotics was unmistakable to his trained nose. They crept closer, using a stack of pallets as cover. Through a grimy window, Sarah could see figures moving inside, at least 4 men, possibly more. One was gesturing animatedly while speaking into a cell phone. Another was weighing white powder on a digital scale. "Command, this is Unit 47. Sarah breathed into her radio. "We have visual confirmation of drug manufacturing in progress. Request immediate backup for warehouse breach." "Copy that, 47. SWAT team is 8 minutes out." 8 minutes felt like an eternity as Sarah and Rex maintained their surveillance. Rex remained perfectly still except for his eyes, which tracked every movement inside the warehouse with the focus of a predator. Sarah had seen him work dozens of crime scenes, but she never stopped being amazed by his dedication. While other dogs might be distracted by urban sounds and smells, Rex could maintain laser focus for hours when duty called. A door on the warehouse's north side suddenly burst open. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized the man stepping outside, Miguel Mendoza himself, the cartel leader they'd been hunting for over a year. He was supposed to be in Mexico, not personally overseeing operations in Chicago. "This is bigger than we thought," Sarah murmured to Rex, who was already tensing for action. Mendoza lit a cigarette and began pacing, speaking rapidly in Spanish into his phone. From her position, Sarah could only catch fragments, but the words "Policia" and "Problemas" came through clearly. Her stomach dropped. Did they know about the surveillance? Rex suddenly pressed against her leg, his warning signal. Sarah's eyes swept the area and spotted the danger. A cartel lookout was climbing onto a shipping container 20 yards to the right, assault rifle in hand. They'd been compromised. "Command, we're blown." Sarah hissed into her radio. "Armed suspect taking elevated position. We need that backup now. SWAT is 4 minutes out. Can you maintain position?" The lookout was scanning the container yard methodically. In seconds, he'd spot them. Sarah made a split-second decision that would define both their careers and their relationship. "Rex," she whispered, pointing toward a gap between containers that led to the warehouse's rear entrance. "Silent approach. We're going hunting." Without hesitation, Rex began moving toward their target with the fluid grace of his wolf ancestors. Sarah followed, her service weapon drawn, trusting completely in her partner's ability to navigate them safely through enemy territory. As they reached the warehouse's back wall, Rex's nose led them to a ventilation grate that hung slightly ajar. Through the opening, they could see directly into the main operation tables covered with drugs, money counting machines, and enough evidence to put the entire organization away forever. Rex looked up at Sarah, his eyes asking a clear question. "Ready, partner?" Sarah's hand found the familiar comfort of Rex's head, their bond stronger than any words could express. In that moment, crouched behind enemy lines with sirens wailing in the distance, she realized that Rex wasn't just her partner. He was her anchor, her courage, and her greatest source of strength. "Let's finish this," she whispered, and together, they prepared to face whatever waited beyond that warehouse door. The ventilation grate creaked softly as Sarah pried it open just enough for Rex to slip through. His sleek black and tan form disappeared into the shadows of the warehouse like smoke. Sarah held her breath, counting the seconds. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi until Rex's soft whine signaled the all clear from inside. She squeezed through the opening and found herself in a storage room filled with empty crates and industrial equipment. Rex sat perfectly still beside a metal door, his ears pricked forward, listening to the voices beyond. Through the thin walls, Sarah could hear Miguel Mendoza barking orders in rapid Spanish. "Rapido. The shipment leaves for Detroit in 2 hours. I want every gram accounted for." Sarah activated her throat mic. "Command, we're inside the warehouse. At least 6 suspects confirmed. Rex is indicating massive drug presence." "Copy that. 47. SWAT is 90 seconds out. Hold position until..." The transmission cut to static as footsteps approached their hiding spot. Rex's body went rigid, his training kicking in as he prepared to defend his partner. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, weapon ready, as the door handle began to turn. A young cartel member stepped into the storage room, flashlight in one hand, pistol in the other. He swept the beam across the room, the light passing inches from Sarah's position. Rex remained motionless as a statue, every muscle coiled like a spring. The man's radio crackled. "Carlos, QVs?" "Nada. Just checking the back rooms." Carlos lowered his weapon and turned to leave. That's when Rex struck. In one fluid motion, the German shepherd launched himself at the gunman, 85 pounds of pure muscle and determination. Carlos went down hard, his weapon skittering across the concrete floor. Rex pinned him with expert precision, his jaws clamped around the man's wrist firm enough to control, careful not to cause permanent damage. "Good boy," Sarah whispered, securing Carlos with zip ties. "Now let's see what they're hiding." The main warehouse floor was a narcotics operation, unlike anything Sarah had seen in her 8-year career. Tables stretched the length of the building, covered with bricks of white powder, scales, cutting agents, and packaging materials. Money-counting machines hummed constantly, processing stacks of cash that seemed to multiply before her eyes. But Rex wasn't interested in the obvious evidence. His nose was working overtime, leading him away from the main operation toward what appeared to be a solid concrete wall at the warehouse's far end. He began pawing at the base of the wall, whining softly with excitement. "What is it, boy?" Sarah followed his lead, running her hands along the seemingly solid surface. Rex's pawing became more insistent. He scratched at a particular spot where a large pipe ran from floor to ceiling, his claws clicking against metal. Sarah examined the pipe more closely and noticed something odd. It wasn't connected to anything. It was purely decorative, which made no sense in an industrial building. "You brilliant dog," she murmured, understanding dawning. She grabbed the pipe and pulled. It moved. The pipe was actually a lever. As she pulled it down, a section of the concrete wall swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a secret room that took Sarah's breath away. Stacks of cash rose from floor to ceiling like green paper towers. She estimated $10 million. Maybe more, but that wasn't all. The room contained enough pure fentanyl to kill half of Chicago. Brick after brick of the deadly drug that had been claiming lives across the city for months. "Command, this is Unit 47, Sarah whispered urgently. "You're not going to believe this. Rex just uncovered what appears to be the cartel's main distribution center. We're looking at millions in cash and enough fentanyl to supply the entire Midwest." "Say again, 47? The dog found a hidden room. This isn't just a processing operation, it's their main vault. Everything they've been moving through Chicago is here." Rex had begun indicating another scent, his nose leading him to a metal filing cabinet in the corner. Sarah opened it and found detailed ledgers, shipping manifests, and distribution lists that would connect the Mendoza cartel to operations in 12 different states. "This is it," she breathed, photographing page after page with her phone. "This evidence will put them away forever." That's when she heard Rex growl a low, menacing sound that made her blood freeze. He was facing the hidden door, his hackles raised, body ready for attack. Miguel Mendoza stepped into the secret room, assault rifle in his hands. "Detectora Martinez," he said with a cold smile. "You and your dog have caused me considerable trouble." Sarah's hand moved toward her weapon, but Mendoza shook his head. "I wouldn't. My men have your SWAT team pinned down outside. It's just you, me, and this room full of evidence that will never see a courtroom." Rex's growl deepened, but Sarah placed a calming hand on his head. She could feel the tension in his muscles, knew he was calculating the distance to Mendoza, planning his attack. "You're finished, Mendoza. Even if you kill us, there are other cops who know about this operation." "Perhaps, but they don't know about the room. And dead cops tell no tales." He raised the rifle. Sarah felt time slow down. In that crystalline moment, she saw everything clearly: Rex's coiled muscles, Mendoza's finger tightening on the trigger, the distance between them. She made her choice. Rex, attack. The German Shepherd exploded forward like a missile. Mendoza's shot went wide as 90 pounds of trained police dog slammed into his chest. They crashed into the money stacks, cash raining down like confetti. As man and dog struggled for control of the weapon, Sarah dove for her radio. "Officer down! Officer down! We need immediate backup in the warehouse." The sound of splintering wood announced SWAT's arrival as they breached the main entrance. Shouts and gunfire echoed through the warehouse as the tactical team engaged Mendoza's men. Through it all, Rex maintained his grip on Mendoza, who finally went limp beneath the dog's weight. Sarah secured the cartel leader with zip ties, her hands shaking from adrenaline. "Good boy," she gasped, hugging Rex tightly. "We did it. We actually did it." As SWAT officers secured the scene and evidence teams began photographing the massive haul, Sarah realized they had just dealt the death blow to one of Chicago's most dangerous criminal organizations. Rex wagged his tail proudly, unaware that this moment of triumph would be their last together. In the distance, sirens wailed as more units arrived to process what would become known as the largest drug bust in Chicago PD history. The Mendoza cartel was finished, but something else was just beginning a chain of events that would test the bond between Sarah and Rex in ways neither could imagine. 3 weeks after the Mendoza warehouse raid, Detective Sarah Martinez sat in her patrol car outside Lincoln Elementary, watching Rex chase a tennis ball across the school playground during their community outreach visit. The children's laughter echoed across the asphalt as Rex performed his signature tricks, sitting, staying, and even playing dead on command. Sarah smiled, remembering how nervous Rex had been during their first school visit 2 years ago. Now he was a natural performer, his tail wagging as kids lined up to pet him. "Unit 47, we have a domestic disturbance call," the radio crackled. 2247 North Cleveland Avenue, apartment 3B. Reports of screaming and possible shots fired. Sarah's stomach tightened. Domestic calls were always unpredictable, especially with potential weapons involved. She whistled for Rex, who immediately abandoned the tennis ball and trotted to her side, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "Duty calls, partner," she murmured, scratching behind his ears as they climbed into the patrol car. The drive through Lincoln Park took 12 minutes, during which Sarah reviewed what dispatch had told her. The caller was a neighbor who reported hearing a woman screaming, followed by what sounded like gunshots. The address belonged to Maria Santos, a young mother with a 3-year-old daughter. No prior domestic violence reports on file. As they pulled up to the 3-story brick apartment building, Sarah noticed broken glass on the sidewalk beneath a second-floor window. Her training kicked in immediately established perimeter, assess threat level, call for backup if necessary. Command: Unit 47 on scene at 2247 North Cleveland. Requesting backup for domestic disturbance with possible shots fired. Copy that, 47. Unit 23 is en route, ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes could be a lifetime in a domestic violence situation. Sarah made the decision that would haunt her forever. They couldn't wait. Rex sensed her tension as they approached the building's entrance. His playful demeanor from the school visit had vanished, replaced by the focused intensity of a working police dog. Sarah drew her service weapon and moved carefully up the narrow stairwell, Rex padding silently beside her. The screaming was coming from apartment 3B, just as dispatch had reported. But there were other sounds too, a child crying, furniture being thrown, and a man's voice raised in rage. "Chicago PD," Sarah called out, positioning herself beside the door. "Open up." The sounds inside stopped abruptly, followed by an eerie silence that made Sarah's skin crawl. She pressed her ear to the door and heard whispered sobbing, a woman trying desperately to quiet herself. That's when she heard the child. "Mommy, I'm scared." The voice belonged to a little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Sarah's heart broke. Her own daughter would have been about that age if the pregnancy hadn't ended in miscarriage 5 years earlier. The protective instinct that had driven her to become a police officer surged through her veins like fire. "Sir, I need you to open the door so we can talk," Sarah called out, trying to keep her voice calm and professional. The response was a gunshot that splintered the door frame inches from her head. "Get away from here." A man's voice screamed. "This is none of your business." Sarah's radio crackled with her urgent whisper. "Shots fired, shots fired. Suspect is armed and has hostages. Where's my backup?" Unit 23 is 2 minutes out. Rex was pressed against the wall beside her, every muscle tense and ready. Sarah knew that look. He was calculating angles, distances, threat assessments. After 3 years together, they didn't need words to communicate their tactical plan. Another gunshot rang out, followed by a woman's terrified scream. Sarah couldn't wait for backup anymore. She tried the door handle and found it unlocked. The apartment was small and cluttered, with overturned furniture creating a maze of obstacles. In the far corner, Sarah spotted them. Maria Santos crouched behind an overturned couch, clutching her 3-year-old daughter Isabella to her chest. Both were trembling with terror. Michael Brennan, Maria's ex-boyfriend, according to the restraining order paperwork Sarah could see scattered on the floor, stood in the center of the room with a .45 caliber pistol in his shaking hand. His eyes were wild, dilated, probably high on methamphetamines or cocaine. "Michael," Sarah said carefully, her weapon trained on his center mass. "I'm Detective Martinez. Let's talk about this. Nobody needs to get hurt. She's trying to keep my daughter from me." Brennan screamed, waving the gun erratically. "Isabella is my blood." "Actually, sir, she's not," Maria whispered through her tears. "The paternity test proved." "Shut up." Brennan's rage erupted as he spun toward Maria and Isabella. Sarah saw everything in slow motion. Brennan's finger tightening on the trigger. Little Isabella's wide, terrified eyes. Maria trying desperately to shield her daughter with her own body. Time crystallized into a single, perfect moment of absolute clarity. Sarah Martinez had spent 8 years as a police officer protecting innocent people from predators like Michael Brennan. She had survived gang shootouts, drug raids, and high-speed chases. She had seen the worst humanity had to offer, and still believed in justice, still fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. In that moment, looking at a terrified 3-year-old girl who reminded her of the daughter she'd never had, Sarah knew exactly what she had to do. She threw herself between Brennan's gun and the Santos family just as he pulled the trigger. The bullet caught her center mass, spinning her around as she crashed into the kitchen table. Rex's roar of rage filled the apartment as he launched himself at Brennan, taking him down with the fury of a wolf protecting his pack. The gun skittered across the linoleum floor as man and dog rolled in a deadly struggle. Sarah tried to get up, tried to help Rex, but her body wouldn't obey. She could taste blood, feel it soaking through her uniform. Her vision began to blur, but she could still see Isabella's terrified face peeking over the couch. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're safe now." Rex had Brennan pinned, the man's arm locked in his powerful jaws. Maria was already on the phone with 911, sobbing as she gave their location to dispatch. Sarah felt herself fading, but Rex was there beside her, his warm body pressed against hers. His dark eyes were filled with an intelligence that transcended species. He knew she was dying. "Good boy," she whispered, her hand finding his familiar. "For one last time. Take care of them, Rex. Promise me." Rex whined softly, pressing his nose against her cheek as sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah Martinez closed her eyes with a smile on her face, knowing that her sacrifice had saved an innocent family and that her faithful partner would carry on their mission of protecting those who needed protection most. In the corner, little Isabella Santos peeked out from behind her mother, watching the brave police dog who had helped save their lives. Captain Rodriguez stood outside the Chicago Police Department's K9 kennels, watching through the chain-link fence as the German Shepherd lay motionless on his concrete bed. Rex's food bowl remained untouched, and his water had barely been touched. The veterinarian, Dr. Amanda Walsh, shook her head grimly. "I've seen this before with military dogs who lose their handlers," she explained to the captain. "Canine depression is real, and it can be fatal." Rex doesn't understand why Sarah isn't coming back. In his mind, he's waiting for her to walk through that door and take him home. The funeral had been 3 days ago. The entire Chicago Police Department had turned out to honor Detective Sarah Martinez, along with hundreds of community members whose lives she had touched. Rex had been there too, sitting at attention beside Sarah's flag-draped casket, his police vest pristine and his posture perfect, despite the grief that seemed to radiate from his very soul. "What are our options?" Captain Rodriguez asked, though. He dreaded the answer. "Retirement is the obvious choice," Dr. Walsh replied. "Rex is 7 years old. That's getting up there for a working dog. And after this trauma," she gestured toward the motionless figure in the kennel, "I don't think he could handle being partnered with another officer." The bond he had with Detective Martinez was extraordinary, even by K-9 standards. Rodriguez nodded slowly. He'd seen the partnership between Sarah and Rex firsthand, had watched them work together with an almost telepathic connection. Rex wasn't just a police dog, he was Sarah's partner in the truest sense of the word. "But retirement to what?" Rodriguez asked. "He can't just sit in someone's backyard. This dog needs purpose." That's when Officer Jenny Chun approached them, her expression thoughtful. Jenny worked in community relations and had been researching innovative programs that other police departments were implementing. "Captain, I might have an idea," she said hesitantly. "I've been reading about courthouse therapy dog programs. They're using specially trained dogs to provide emotional support for victims and witnesses during trials." Dr. Walsh's eyebrows raised with interest. "That's actually brilliant. Rex has the perfect temperament for that kind of work. He's been around traumatized people before, and his training would make him ideal for high-stress environments." Rodriguez looked skeptical. "A therapy dog? Rex is a 90-pound German Shepherd with bite training. How is that therapeutic?" "You'd be surprised," Jenny replied. "There's something about the presence of a trained police dog that makes people feel safer. And Rex has always been gentle with children and victims. Remember how he was with the Santos family after the shooting?" The mention of the Santos family sent a chill through Rodriguez. That case would be going to trial soon, and Maria Santos was scheduled to testify about the domestic violence incident that had claimed Sarah's life. The irony wasn't lost on him. Rex might end up providing comfort during the very trial related to his partner's death. Dr. Walsh pulled out her tablet and showed them research studies. "Look at these statistics. Victims who have therapy dogs present during testimony are 73% more likely to complete their statements without breaking down. Children especially respond well to the presence of a calm, trained animal." Over the next 2 weeks, they began Rex's transition slowly. Dr. Emily Chun, a trauma psychologist who consulted with the court system, worked with Rex daily to assess his suitability for therapy work. Her initial evaluation was promising. "Rex has an almost supernatural ability to read human emotion," Dr. Chun explained to Rodriguez after her first session. "When I simulated distress, he immediately moved to provide comfort, not in an aggressive, protective way, but with gentle contact and calm presence. It's like he instinctively knows how to help." The training process was unlike anything Rex had experienced before. Instead of learning to detect drugs or apprehend suspects, he was learning to recognize anxiety, panic attacks, and emotional distress. He practiced remaining calm in chaotic environments, learned to approach frightened people slowly and non-threateningly, and mastered the art of providing comfort through simple presence. The breakthrough came during his 3rd week of training. Dr. Chun had arranged for a volunteer, a young woman who was an actual crime victim preparing to testify in an unrelated case. When she began to panic during a practice session, reliving her trauma, Rex immediately moved to her side and gently placed his head on her lap. The woman's sobbing gradually subsided as she stroked his fur. "It's like he absorbs the fear," she whispered. "I don't feel alone anymore." Rodriguez watched through the observation window, amazed at the transformation. This was still Rex Still, the brave, intelligent dog who had saved countless lives alongside Sarah. But now he was channeling that same protective instinct in a completely different way. The official certification came 6 weeks after Sarah's death. Rex passed every evaluation with flying colors, earning his therapy dog credentials and a new vest royal blue instead of police black, with therapy dog emblazoned on the sides. His first assignment would be the Cook County Courthouse, starting with the Mendoza cartel trial, the case that he and Sarah had built together through their final investigation. The irony was profound. Rex would be providing comfort to the very witnesses whose testimony would put away the criminals he had helped capture. Judge Patricia Harrison personally approved Rex's presence in her courtroom after meeting him during a private session. "I've been on the bench for 22 years, she told Rodriguez, "and I've never seen anything like this dog's ability to calm people. If his presence can help victims find the courage to speak their truth, then he belongs here." As Rex walked through the courthouse corridors for the first time in his new role, something remarkable happened. He carried himself differently still. Dignified, still alert, but with a gentleness that hadn't been there during his police work. It was as if he understood that his mission had evolved from protecting through force to protecting through compassion. Court personnel who had heard about the legendary police dog were surprised by his calm demeanor. Children in the family services waiting area gravitated toward him naturally. Then anxious witnesses found themselves relaxing in his presence. Dr. Chun observed his first day with satisfaction. "Rex has found his new purpose," she told Rodriguez. "He's still serving and protecting, just in a different way." Sarah would be proud. That night, for the first time since Sarah's death, Rex ate his entire dinner and slept peacefully. He had found a new way to honor his fallen partner's memory by helping other victims find their voices and their strength. The transformation was complete. Rex was no longer just a retired police dog. He was a healer, a comforter, and a bridge between trauma and justice. His greatest challenges still lay ahead, but he was ready to face them with the same courage and dedication that had defined his partnership with Sarah Martinez. The Cook County Criminal Courts building buzzed with an energy that veteran court reporter Margaret Sullivan hadn't felt in her 30-year career. News vans lined California Avenue, their satellite dishes reaching toward the gray February sky, like mechanical flowers seeking sunlight. The People of Illinois versus Miguel Mendoza and Associates had captured the city's attention not just for its scope, the largest drug trafficking conspiracy in Chicago's history, but for the tragic circumstances that had made it possible. Rex sat calmly in the marble hallway outside courtroom 302, his royal blue therapy vest a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere. Court personnel and visitors alike stopped to stare at the legendary German Shepherd who had helped build the case against the Mendoza cartel alongside his fallen partner, Detective Sarah Martinez. Some whispered stories they'd heard about Rex's heroics. Others simply felt drawn to his peaceful presence in the chaos of the courthouse. Dr. Emily Chun knelt beside Rex, performing her final pre-trial assessment. "How's our boy doing today?" she asked Officer Jenny Rodriguez, who had volunteered to be Rex's courthouse handler. "Rock steady," Jenny replied, scratching behind Rex's ears. "It's like he knows how important today is. He's been calm but alert all morning, almost like he's preparing for something." Inside courtroom 302, Judge Patricia Harrison was addressing a packed gallery. The trial had drawn national media attention, with CNN, Fox News, and local Chicago stations all represented. In the defendant's section, Miguel Mendoza sat flanked by 3 defense attorneys. His orange jumpsuit reminder that he'd been denied bail due to flight risk. The prosecution table was equally crowded, with Assistant District Attorney Michael Thompson leading a team of prosecutors who had spent months preparing their case. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Harrison announced, "before we begin jury selection, I want to address the presence of a therapy dog in my courtroom. Rex is a certified therapy animal who will be available to provide emotional support to witnesses and victims during this trial. The dog will remain in the hallway unless specifically requested by a witness who becomes distressed during testimony." Defense attorney Marcus Webb immediately stood. "Your Honor, we object to the presence of this animal. The defendant has a right to a fair trial, and having the police dog who participated in gathering evidence against my client present in the courthouse creates an inherently prejudicial atmosphere." Judge Harrison's expression remained neutral, but those who knew her well could see the steel in her eyes. "Mr. Webb, this is a therapy dog, not a circus act. Rex's presence is purely for the emotional well-being of witnesses, not for dramatic effect. Your objection is noted and overruled." The jury selection process took 3 grueling days. Potential jurors were questioned extensively about their feelings toward police, their opinions on the war on drugs, and whether they could remain impartial despite the emotional nature of Detective Martinez's death. By Thursday afternoon, they had their 12 jurors and 4 alternates, a diverse group that included a retired teacher, a construction foreman, a social worker, and a young mother who worked part-time at a daycare center. Opening statements began on Friday morning. ADA Thompson painted a picture of a criminal enterprise that had flooded Chicago streets with enough fentanyl to kill thousands, all while corrupting officials and intimidating witnesses. His voice carried particular weight when he described Detective Martinez's ultimate sacrifice. "Ladies and gentlemen, Detective Sarah Martinez gave her life protecting an innocent family from violence. The evidence she and her partner Rex gathered evidence that cost Detective Martinez her life will show you beyond any reasonable doubt that these defendants operated a criminal conspiracy that brought death and misery to our city." Webb's opening was more subdued but equally passionate. "My client Miguel Mendoza is not responsible for the tragic death of Detective Martinez. That was the act of a disturbed individual with no connection to my client. The prosecution wants you to convict based on emotion rather than facts. Don't let their sympathy campaign distract you from the lack of direct evidence linking Mr. Mendoza to these alleged crimes." The first week of testimony focused on the technical aspects of the case: financial records, wiretap evidence, and forensic analysis of the drugs seized from the warehouse. Rex remained in the hallway, providing comfort to court personnel and visitors who seemed drawn to his calming presence. Everything changed when Maria Santos arrived to testify. Maria had been dreading this moment for months. As she walked through the courthouse metal detectors with her 3-year-old daughter Isabella, her hands shook visibly. The little girl clutched a worn stuffed elephant, her wide eyes taking in the intimidating surroundings. "Mama, why are there so many people?" Isabella whispered. "We're here to tell the truth about the scary man," Maria replied, though her own voice trembled with anxiety. That's when Isabella spotted Rex lying peacefully near the courtroom entrance, surrounded by a small group of courthouse employees who were taking their lunch break near him. The little girl's face lit up with recognition, though she couldn't quite place where she'd seen the beautiful dog before. "Mama, look at the pretty doggy." Isabella broke free from her mother's hand and approached Rex cautiously. Rex sensed the child's approach and lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Isabella's with gentle curiosity. Dr. Chun, who had been monitoring Rex's interactions, watched carefully as the little girl reached out tentatively to pet his fur. "He's so soft," Isabella whispered, her fear of the courthouse environment melting away as she stroked Rex's head. Maria approached more slowly, still nervous about her upcoming testimony. She had been receiving threatening phone calls for weeks, warnings about what would happen if she testified against certain people. The prosecution had offered her protection, but fear still gnawed at her constantly. As she watched her daughter interact fearlessly with Rex, Maria felt some of her own anxiety begin to ease. There was something profoundly comforting about the dog's presence, a sense of safety and protection that reminded her of something she couldn't quite place. Ada Thompson appeared in the hallway, ready to escort Maria into the courtroom for her testimony. "Mrs. Santos, we're ready for you." Maria's panic returned immediately. Her breathing became shallow. Her hands started shaking again. Isabella noticed her mother's distress and looked up at Rex with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. "Mama's scared," she told the dog matter-of-factly, as if expecting him to understand and help. Rex seemed to respond to the child's assessment. He rose gracefully and moved closer to Maria, gently pressing his warm body against her legs in a gesture of comfort and support. That's when Isabella spoke the words that would change everything. Looking directly at Rex with sudden recognition, dawning in her 3-year-old eyes, she pointed at him with pure joy and exclaimed, "Mama, that's the doggy who saved us from the scary man." The courthouse hallway fell silent. Maria's hands flew to her mouth as the memory came flooding back: the domestic violence incident, the gunshots, the police officers who had risked their lives to protect her and Isabella. Rex wagged his tail gently, as if he too remembered that terrible night and the brave woman who had died protecting this little girl and her mother. In that moment, the trial became about more than drug trafficking. It became about the interconnected web of courage, sacrifice, and justice that defined the best of what law enforcement could be. The words hung in the courthouse hallway like a thunderclap that refused to fade. Every conversation stopped. Every footstep paused. Even the distant hum of the building's ventilation system seemed to quiet as 3-year-old Isabella Santos's declaration echoed off the marble walls. "That's the doggy who saved us from the scary man." Maria Santos felt the world tilt beneath her feet as memories came crashing back like a dam bursting. The apartment, the screaming. Michael Brennan, with his wild eyes and shaking hands, pointing that terrible gun at her baby girl. And then the police officers, who had burst through the door like guardian angels. The female detective with kind eyes, and the magnificent German shepherd who had taken down Isabella's attacker with such fierce precision. "Oh my God," Maria whispered, her hand reaching out instinctively to touch Rex's head. "Oh my God, it's you." Dr. Emily Chun, who had been observing the interaction as part of her therapy dog monitoring, immediately recognized the significance of what was happening. She quickly activated her phone's recording function. This moment could be crucial evidence. ADA Michael Thompson, who had been waiting to escort Maria into the courtroom, stopped mid-stride. His prosecutorial instincts were already calculating the implications. If this dog was connected to another case involving Maria Santos, it could either strengthen their witness's credibility or potentially complicate her testimony. "Mrs. Santos," Thompson said carefully, "what exactly are you remembering?" Maria's eyes filled with tears as she knelt down to Isabella's level. "Mia, do you remember the night when the scary man came to our apartment? When we were so frightened?" Isabella nodded solemnly, her small hand still resting on Rex's fur. "The scary man was yelling at you. And then the police lady came, and her doggy bit the scary man and made him stop hurting us." Rex's tail began to wag slowly, as if he too was remembering that night. He moved closer to Isabella, gently nuzzling her cheek in a gesture that seemed to communicate across species. "Yes, little one. I remember you too." Defense attorney Marcus Webb had been walking past the courtroom when he heard the commotion. His face darkened as he realized what was happening. A connection between his client's case and another criminal incident could be devastating to his defense strategy. "Your Honor," Webb called out, quickly approaching Judge Harrison, who had emerged from her chambers to investigate the disturbance. "I demand an immediate sidebar. This is highly irregular and potentially prejudicial to my client." Judge Harrison surveyed the scene, the little girl petting the therapy dog, the mother crying as memories returned, the prosecutor furiously taking notes, and the defense attorney looking like he wanted to object to gravity itself. "All counsel in my chambers now," the judge commanded. As the attorneys filed into the judge's chambers, Maria continued to piece together the connections. The brave female detective who had saved their lives. It must have been Detective Sarah Martinez, the officer they kept mentioning in the news coverage of this trial. The same detective whose evidence work had built the case against the Mendoza cartel. "Rex," Maria whispered, saying the dog's name for the first time. She had heard it called out that night during the chaos, but trauma had fragmented her memories. "Your partner. She saved our lives." Jenny Rodriguez, Rex's courthouse handler, approached carefully. She had been briefed on Rex's history, including the circumstances of Detective Martinez's death, but she hadn't made the connection to Maria Santos. "Mrs. Santos," Jenny said gently, "Detective Martinez was my colleague and friend. She died protecting you and your daughter from Michael Brennan 3 weeks ago." The full weight of the revelation hit Maria like a physical blow. The woman who had died saving her family was the same detective who had spent months building the case against the drug dealers. The dog providing comfort to her daughter was the same canine who had helped gather the evidence that would hopefully put these criminals away forever. "I didn't know," Maria sobbed. "In all the chaos and trauma, I never connected. I never realized that the detective who died was the same one who built this case." Isabella, with the resilience of childhood, had moved on from the heavy emotions and was now showing Rex her stuffed elephant. "This is Ellie," she told the dog seriously. "She keeps me safe when I'm scared." Rex sniffed the elephant politely, then gently licked Isabella's hand, making her giggle. The sound of a child's laughter in the courthouse hallway drew smiles from even the most hardened court personnel. Inside Judge Harrison's chambers, the legal arguments were intense. Webb was arguing that this coincidental connection between cases was so prejudicial that it should result in a mistrial. Thompson countered that if Maria Santos had additional relevant testimony about criminal activity, the jury had a right to hear it. "Your Honor," Thompson pressed, "if Mrs. Santos witnessed Michael Brennan's connection to the defendants, that could be directly relevant to our case. Brennan had a history of drug-related arrests, and if he was working for the Mendoza organization, ... That's pure speculation." Webb interrupted. "There's no evidence connecting Brennan to my client. This is a transparent attempt to inflame the jury's emotions by bringing up Detective Martinez's death." Judge Harrison considered carefully. After 22 years on the bench, she had developed a keen sense for when coincidence crossed the line into crucial evidence. "I'm going to allow Mrs. Santos to complete her originally scheduled testimony," she decided. "However, before any additional testimony regarding the domestic violence incident, I want a thorough investigation into any potential connections between Michael Brennan and the defendants. If the prosecution can establish relevance beyond emotional impact, we'll revisit this issue." Meanwhile, in the hallway, something remarkable was happening. Word had spread throughout the courthouse about the reunion between Rex and the family he had helped save. Court employees, attorneys, and even some jurors' family members had gathered to witness the touching scene. Isabella had curled up next to Rex on the marble floor, using his warm body as a pillow while she clutched her stuffed elephant. Maria sat beside them, one hand resting on her daughter's back, the other gently stroking Rex's fur. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog. "Thank you for saving us. Thank you for bringing us justice." Rex seemed to understand. His dark eyes held a wisdom that transcended his canine nature, the wisdom of a creature who had dedicated his life to protecting the innocent and serving justice. As the attorneys emerged from the judge's chambers and prepared to resume the trial, everyone in that courthouse hallway understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. The threads of justice, sacrifice, and healing were weaving together in ways that none of them could have anticipated. The trial was about to take a turn that would transform it from a simple drug trafficking case into something much more profound, a testament to the interconnected nature of crime, justice, and the heroes who bridged the gap between them. The courtroom felt electric as Maria Santos took the witness stand for the second time in 3 days. Her original testimony about the suspicious activities at Mendoza's front business had been straightforward, almost routine. But now, after the weekend recess that Judge Harrison had granted to investigate the connections between Michael Brennan and the defendants, everything had changed. ADA Thompson had spent 72 hours pulling phone records, financial documents, and surveillance footage. What they discovered was a web of connections that none of them had anticipated. Michael Brennan wasn't just Maria's violent ex-boyfriend. He was a low-level distributor for the Mendoza cartel, tasked with intimidating witnesses and potential informants in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. Rex lay quietly near the witness stand, his presence having become a source of strength not just for Maria, but for the entire courtroom. Even some of the jurors had been seen glancing at him during testimony, as if drawing comfort from his calm dignity. "Mrs. Santos," Thompson began, his voice gentle but purposeful, "I want to take you back to the night of January 15th. Can you tell the jury what happened at your apartment?" Maria's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the microphone. She looked down at Rex, whose dark eyes seemed to offer silent encouragement, then began to speak. "Michael Brennan came to my apartment around midnight. He was different that night, more agitated than usual. His eyes were wild, and he kept checking his phone." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "He was screaming about how I knew too much, how I'd seen things I shouldn't have seen." "What things had you seen, Mrs. Santos?" "The activities at the auto repair shop on Cleveland Avenue, the one owned by Mr. Mendoza's organization." Maria gestured toward the defendant's table. "I'd been documenting the unusual traffic patterns, the late-night visitors, the packages being moved in and out. I thought it was just drug dealing, but Michael said it was much bigger than that." Defense attorney Webb shifted uncomfortably. This testimony was painting his clients in an even worse light than the prosecution's original case. "What exactly did Mr. Brennan say about the auto shop?" Thompson pressed. "He said the bosses, that's what he called the Mendoza people, had found out that I'd been watching. He said they'd ordered him to take care of the problem before I could talk to police." Maria's voice broke slightly. "He meant me and Isabella. We were the problem that needed to be taken care of." A gasp rippled through the courtroom gallery. The jury members exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't just about drug trafficking anymore. This was about witness intimidation and attempted murder. "Mrs. Santos, what happened when Detective Martinez and Rex arrived at your apartment?" Maria looked directly at Rex, tears streaming down her face. "They saved our lives. Detective Martinez?" She didn't hesitate. When Michael pointed his gun at Isabella, Detective Martinez threw herself between the gun and my baby girl. The courtroom was so quiet that the hum of the ventilation system seemed deafening. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, caught up in the emotional weight of the testimony. Michael was screaming that the Mendoza people had promised him money and protection if he kept me quiet. He said they couldn't afford to have witnesses talking about what went on at that auto shop. Maria wiped her eyes with a tissue. "But Detective Martinez." She looked right at him and said, "Not on my watch." No one hurts innocent families on my watch. Thompson turned to face the jury, letting the weight of those words sink in. What happened next? Detective Martinez saved us? She took the bullet meant for my daughter, and Rex ... Maria's voice filled with admiration as she looked at the German shepherd. Rex took down Michael instantly. But it was too late for Detective Martinez. The prosecution had spent the weekend confirming every detail of Maria's account. Phone records showed multiple calls between Brennan and known Mendoza associates in the days leading up to the domestic violence incident. Financial records revealed payments made to Brennan through shell companies connected to the cartel. Most damaging of all, they had recovered Brennan's cell phone from the crime scene, which contained text messages explicitly ordering him to silence the witness before she talks. Mrs. Santos, Thompson continued, did Mr. Brennan ever mention specific names from the Mendoza organization? Yes, he mentioned Miguel Mendoza by name several times. He also talked about someone called El Jefe. I think that was Carlos Mendoza, Miguel's brother. Michael said El Jefe had personally ordered him to handle the witness problem in Lincoln Park. Webb jumped to his feet. Objection. Hearsay. Your Honor, Thompson responded, this testimony goes to the defendant's motive and state of mind. The statements were made by Mr. Brennan in furtherance of the conspiracy. Judge Harrison considered carefully. I'll allow it, but the jury is instructed that these are statements attributed to Mr. Brennan, not direct evidence of the defendant's actions. As Maria continued her testimony, the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. The Mendoza organization hadn't just been dealing drugs, they had been systematically intimidating potential witnesses throughout the neighborhood. Brennan was one of several enforcers tasked with keeping residents quiet about what they observed. Detective Martinez died because she was building a case against these people, Maria said, her voice now strong with conviction. She died protecting my family from their violence. And Rex ... Rex has spent every day since then helping other victims find the courage to speak their truth. The emotional impact on the jury was visible. Several jurors were wiping their eyes, while others sat forward in their chairs, completely absorbed in Maria's testimony. Mrs. Santos, Thompson said gently, is there anything else you'd like the jury to know? Maria looked directly at Miguel Mendoza, who had been staring at his hands throughout her testimony. Detective Martinez gave her life to stop these people from hurting innocent families. She believed that justice mattered more than her own safety. And Rex ... She smiled down at the German shepherd, who had been listening intently to every word. Rex is still serving justice, still protecting people, just in a different way now. As Maria stepped down from the witness stand, she paused beside Rex and gently placed her hand on his head. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything. Rex's tail wagged once, a gentle acknowledgement that seemed to bridge the gap between past trauma and present healing. The courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause, something Judge Harrison would normally have stopped immediately. But even she seemed moved by the testimony, allowing the moment of appreciation for both the fallen detective and her faithful partner who continued to serve. As the day's proceedings concluded, everyone in that courtroom understood they had witnessed something extraordinary. Justice wasn't just about evidence and legal procedures. It was about the human connections that bind us together and the heroes who sacrifice everything to protect those connections. The Mendoza trial had become something much larger than anyone anticipated, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that define the best of humanity. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours and 17 minutes, a remarkably short time for such a complex case. When the foreman stood to deliver the verdict, the packed courtroom held its collective breath. Rex lay calmly beside the victim. Advocate's table, but his ears were pricked forward, as if he too understood the gravity of the moment. On the charge of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, we find the defendant Miguel Mendoza, T. The first verdict seemed to break a dam of tension that had been building for weeks. As the foreman continued reading guilty on all 23 counts for Miguel Mendoza, guilty on all counts for his brother Carlos, guilty for each of the 5 co-defendants, Maria Santos felt tears of relief streaming down her face. Rex seemed to sense the shift in the courtroom's energy. His tail began to wag slowly, and he lifted his head with what could only be described as dignity. Several jurors glanced at him, their own eyes reflecting the weight of the justice they had just delivered. Judge Patricia Harrison called for order as the courtroom erupted in subdued celebration. Family members of victims who had died from the cartel's fentanyl embraced each other. Police officers who had worked the case for months nodded with grim satisfaction. "Before I dismiss this jury," Judge Harrison announced, "I want to address something unprecedented that has occurred during this trial. We have been privileged to witness not just the workings of our justice system, but something far more profound, the interconnected nature of service, sacrifice, and healing." She turned to look at Rex, who was now sitting at attention as if he understood he was being addressed. "Rex, you began this case as evidence. Your work with Detective Martinez led to the discoveries that made these convictions possible. But you have ended this trial as something far more important, a symbol of hope and healing for victims who might otherwise have remained silent." The courtroom was absolutely silent as Judge Harrison continued what would become known as the most unusual judicial statement in Cook County history. Detective Sarah Martinez gave her life protecting the innocent. In doing so, she not only saved the Santos family, but she preserved the witness testimony that proved crucial to these convictions. Her sacrifice has rippled through this case in ways that demonstrate the profound interconnectedness of justice. Isabella Santos, who had been sitting quietly with her stuffed elephant throughout the proceedings, suddenly stood up in the gallery and pointed at Rex. "The doggy is a hero like his police lady," she declared in her clear 3-year-old voice. A soft chuckle rippled through the courtroom, but Judge Harrison's expression remained serious. "Young lady, you are absolutely correct. Rex is indeed a hero, both for his service with Detective Martinez and for his continued service to this court." Ada Thompson rose from his seat. "Your Honor, if I may, the prosecution would like to make a formal statement regarding Rex's contribution to this case." "Proceed, Counselor." Rex's work with Detective Martinez led to the discovery of evidence that formed the foundation of our case. But beyond that, his presence during this trial has enabled witnesses to find the courage to testify truthfully. Without Rex's calming influence, we might never have heard the complete story of the conspiracy that claimed Detective Martinez's life. Defense Attorney Webb, despite his client's convictions, stood as well. "Your Honor, while I obviously disagree with the jury's verdict, I must acknowledge that Rex's conduct throughout this trial has been exemplary. His presence added dignity to these proceedings, not prejudice." As the formal proceedings concluded and the defendants were led away in shackles, something remarkable began to happen. People in the courtroom, jurors, attorneys, court personnel, victims' families, began approaching Rex to say goodbye. Each person who knelt beside the German Shepherd seemed to find something different in the encounter. Some simply wanted to pet him and say thank you. Others whispered private words that only Rex could hear. A few, like Maria Santos, spoke to him as if he could understand the full weight of what had transpired. "You and Detective Martinez changed everything," Maria told him, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved my daughter's life, and then you gave her the courage to help put away the people who tried to hurt us." Isabella, who had developed a special bond with Rex over the weeks of the trial, hugged him tightly around the neck. "I love you, doggy. You're the best police dog in the whole world." Rex's tail wagged gently as he nuzzled the little girl's cheek, creating a moment that court photographer Janet Williams captured in what would become an iconic image, a symbol of hope emerging from tragedy. Dr. Emily Chun, who had been documenting Rex's therapy work throughout the trial, approached with her final assessment. In 20 years of working with trauma victims, I've never seen anything like Rex's impact. He's helped 12 different witnesses find the courage to testify, and his presence has measurably reduced anxiety levels in everyone who's interacted with him. Captain Rodriguez, who had made the decision to transition Rex from police work to therapy work, watched the scene with deep satisfaction. Sarah would be so proud, he told Jenny Rodriguez, who had served as Rex's courthouse handler. She always said Rex had a special gift for helping people. As the courtroom began to empty, Judge Harrison made one final, unprecedented gesture. She stepped down from the bench and approached Rex directly. "Officer Rex," she said formally, "on behalf of the Cook County court system and the citizens of Chicago, I want to thank you for your service both past and present. You have shown us that heroism takes many forms, and that the bonds between partners can transcend even death." Rex seemed to understand the solemnity of the moment. He sat perfectly still as Judge Harrison gently placed her hand on his head, a judicial blessing for a dog who had served justice in ways that no law book could have anticipated. As the late afternoon sun streamed through the courthouse windows, Rex walked out of courtroom 302 for the final time as part of the Mendoza trial. But his work was far from over. There would be other trials, other frightened witnesses, other victims who needed the particular kind of courage that only Rex could provide. In the courthouse steps, Maria Santos paused with Isabella to watch Rex and Jenny Rodriguez walk toward their car. The little girl waved enthusiastically at her four-legged hero. "Goodbye, doggy. Thank you for saving us." Rex turned at the sound of her voice, his tail wagging in acknowledgement. In that moment, as the winter wind ruffled his fur and the Chicago skyline stretched behind him, Rex embodied something profound, the idea that true heroes never really retire. They simply find new ways to serve. Detective Sarah Martinez's legacy lived on, not just in the criminals she helped convict, but in the continued service of her faithful partner, who had learned to heal hearts instead of pursuing suspects, to comfort the traumatized instead of tracking down criminals. Justice had been served, but more importantly, hope had been restored. And Rex, the remarkable German shepherd, who had bridged the gap between tragedy and healing, would continue his mission for years to come, protecting the innocent, one gentle touch at a time.